Welcome back to Only Talk Sports. So we talk sports every single day, or at least we try to. I'm Ross Jaffrey. Subscribe to the channel if you like sports content. Hit that notification bell so you never miss our video. The second round in the NBA playoffs has just wrapped up, and the conference finals are right around the corner. They're going to be beginning on Tuesday night in the Eastern Conference Finals between the Indiana Pacers and the Boston Celtics. And then the Western Conference Finals is going to start on Wednesday night between the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Dallas Mavericks. But it's been a ride just to get here through the NBA playoffs. I'm going to review what has happened so far in the NBA playoffs really quickly, and then I'm going to make my predictions of who I think is going to win the Eastern Conference Finals and the Western Conference Finals, which will set us up for the final showdown with the 2024 NBA Finals. Now, it's been a crazy NBA playoffs so far. A lot of people talked about once LeBron James started to age out and Stephon Curry as well, some of these other older stars, that the NBA might not be as good anymore. Well, that's been debunked because when you look around you at all the stars in the NBA right now, there are great players on so many different teams, and there were legitimately around 6 or 7 teams that a lot of people thought had a shot to win it all this season, and the defending champs in the Denver Nuggets, they just went down to the Minnesota Timberwolves. So that tells you everything you need to know right now, that the NBA at the top is very balanced. It is stacked. There are so many great players all over the place, and it makes the league very fun to watch, despite some questionable officiating at times and sometimes a lack of defense. But there are still teams that are good at defense, and one team that was really good on defense this season was the New York Knicks, especially when they made that trade acquisition to add OG Anunoby in the middle of the season, and he was fantastic for the Knicks this year. But unfortunately for New York, I believe they would have easily beat Indiana in this second round series if they were healthy. When they lost Julius Randle, ironically, the Knicks were just fine. They almost looked like they were playing even better. Guys like Josh Hart and Dante DiVincenzo, they stepped up alongside Jalen Brunson and OG Anunoby. But then in the series, unfortunately for the Knicks, Mitchell Robinson went down, OG Anunoby got hurt, and then Josh Hart got banged up, and then Jalen Brunson broke his hand, and that was all she wrote for the Knicks. I'm happy for the Indiana Pacers. They haven't had a lot of NBA playoff success recently, so it is awesome to see them have a much improved team, and it looks like Indiana is going to keep improving in the future since they have a really young squad with a lot of talent, and they're a fantastic offensive team, but they wouldn't have beat the New York Knicks if the Knicks were healthy. And now they're going to have to face off with the Boston Celtics in the Eastern Conference Finals, which they're probably the best team in the NBA right now. I know some people would dispute that and say, well, it was Denver, well, it was Minnesota. I don't agree. I think this season the Boston Celtics have the best team in the NBA. I actually thought they had the best team last year, but they blew it against the Miami Heat, and the Denver Nuggets ended up winning the title last season. But the Boston Celtics, they need to prove this season that this is their year. I think they have the best team, and they need to go out there and continue to play at a high level and not show the little bit of cracks that they do show in the playoffs at times where they do not give 110% and they end up falling a little bit flat. They have to treat every game and every opponent the same way, and they can't take any opponent for granted. And I think it's going to be a wake-up call for Indiana because they played the Milwaukee Bucks and the New York Knicks, two teams that had injuries this season toward the end of the year that affected their playoff run. And even though the Boston Celtics have an injury to Kristaps Porzingis, the rest of the team is healthy, and it's going to be very tough for Indiana to be able to knock off the Boston Celtics even without Kristaps Porzingis. But it does look like Kristaps could return in the series, and if he does, that's going to make it even worse for Indiana. And I feel like it's going to make a lot of people realize that Indiana, while they're a good team, they might not be ready for this moment. I like Tyrese Halliburton. I think he is a fantastic player, but sometimes he is offensively passive. He has to realize that he is the star that he is and score more points when those opportunities are presented to him. He can be a guy that can score 30, 35 points every single game, but he likes to get others involved. That's great, but when he is too passive, it hurts the team. Pascal Siakam, he was a fantastic trade acquisition they did in the regular season, coming over from the Toronto Raptors. Siakam was rotting with the Raptors the past few years since they were struggling, but he's made Indiana a much better team. Miles Turner had a lot of injuries throughout his career, but he's a very explosive player. He's healthy right now. Andrew Nembhard's a young guy. Obi Toppin's a young guy. Aaron Nesmith's a young guy. All are playing well and giving the Pacers a lot of different options to score the basketball. And TJ McConnell, the ultimate glue guy, the ultimate bench player, undersized and undervalued at times, but he plays so hard. I think that Indiana is a great team. I really like their future, but their defense is a problem. They're not a good defensive team. They can score all the points in the world, but they can't stop anybody for the most part. And yes, they did stop the Knicks at times, but I do believe it's because the Knicks had all those injuries. And when you look at Boston, even if Kristaps can't play, you got Jason Tatum, you got Jaylen Brown, Drew Holiday, Al Horford, Peyton Pritchard, Sam Hauser, so many guys that can score. And when Derek White's on fire like he has been lately, that's made the Boston Celtics a much better team because it gives Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown a break where they don't have to score as much. They got the experience in Al Horford. Drew Holiday, it's the Marcus Smart replacement. I think the Boston Celtics are a better defensive team than Indiana, and they're just as good of an offensive team, if not even better when they're clicking on all cylinders. So I do believe, even though the Boston Celtics, they're not trustworthy, and I don't trust them as far as I can throw them, I think they're the best team in the NBA right now, and they have a great shot to win it all this year. They can't take Indiana for granted, though, but I will go with the Boston Celtics to beat the Indiana Pacers in 6 games. I think that it could be 5 games if Kristaps can return earlier, but I'm going to go with it taking 6 games for the Boston Celtics to knock off Indiana because I do think the Pacers' offense will keep them in a lot of games and possibly will help them knock off the Celtics a couple times. And usually Boston always has one game where they don't play all that well. Look at the Cleveland Cavaliers series and the Miami Heat series. But I do think at the end of the day, Boston is going to get it done and move on to the 2024 NBA Finals. But then on the other side in the Western Conference, who's going to meet Boston in my opinion? You got the Minnesota Timberwolves knocking off the Denver Nuggets, the defending champs, which a lot of people were not expecting. But I do think that the Denver Nuggets, they showed cracks this season that they were not as good of a team as they were last year. Bruce Brown being gone, Jeff Green, Jamal Murray, he was not as aggressive at times this season, and I think that was a big problem. Nikola Jokic, he did everything he possibly could, but they needed more guys to step up, more contributions from Aaron Gordon, Michael Porter Jr. They just weren't getting it. And Minnesota, their defense, just like the Knicks were when they were healthy, stellar. Naz Reid, 6th man of the year, stepping up behind Karl Anthony Towns, who is foul prone, but that's where Naz Reid can come in and play when Cat gets in foul trouble. Rudy Gobert, fantastic on the defensive end. And then Ant-Man, we know what he can do. And then you got the experienced guard in Mike Conley that plays next to Ant-Man, who's very important for the team as well because you can't just have a lot of youth. You do need experience as well. And then Jaden McDaniels, he's been stepping up lately. A lot of people talk about him because he's always getting in fights and he always seems to be in the thick of scrums, but you cannot fault his effort. And then you look at Nickeil Alexander-Walker as well, another guy that has a lot of growing to do still. He's a very young guy playing well. I like the Minnesota Timberwolves team. I know people really associate this team with youth because of Ant-Man, but they have experience. This is a roster that is built to win right now. And with Boston possibly not being a trustworthy team, the Minnesota Timberwolves, this could be their year if they can find a way to get by the Dallas Mavericks. But Dallas, they've had a really good season as well, and a lot of people didn't think they could get by the Oklahoma City Thunder. But the issue with Oklahoma City is that they are too young. They're going to be a problem in the future. I wrote that on Twitter a couple days ago. I think with the amount of youth that team has with Chet Holmgren, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Josh Giddey, Jalen Williams, both of them. And then you also have Lou Dort. That team is going to be so good in a couple seasons. It's already elite now, and they were the 1 seed in the West. But once they get a few more years of experience under their belt, I believe the Thunder are going to be in the thick of being able to win a title, maybe even multiple titles with that team if they can keep them all together. And Chet Holmgren, he is a fantastic player to watch. I know a lot of people thought he should have won Rookie of the Year over Victor Wembanyama, but Victor Wembanyama had better stats, even though he didn't make the team better, quote unquote. But the Spurs don't have a great team right now. The Thunder do, and that helped Chet Holmgren have such a great season as well. Plus, he wasn't an actual rookie. He just didn't play in his rookie year because he had the injury. But beside all that, Oklahoma City's fantastic, but Dallas found a way to win anyway, and it's because of the duo of Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving. They've been great the past few years in Dallas, but they haven't really been able to make a deep run because of the fact that they never really had a lot of help outside of those two. And I've been saying for a couple years now, Dallas needed to add a little bit more firepower to pair with Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving. And if Dallas did that, then they would have become a much better team. And they did that this season with the addition of PJ Washington. Terrible decision by the Charlotte Hornets to trade him. They're a terrible team, but it's great for PJ Washington that he can now be a part of a great team. And his addition has made Dallas so much better because it gives them a legit third option that is very consistent at being a legit third option, not a guy that sometimes shows up. He's a consistently good player, and he's made Dallas a much much better team. And then Derek Jones has been stepping up lately, playing well. Daniel Gafford was a pretty good addition. And then Derek Lively, he's a rookie. But all these young rookies that are making a difference in the NBA playoffs this year, it shows that the future of the NBA is very bright. So I think the Dallas Mavericks, all across the board, are a much better team than they have been the past couple years with the acquisitions that they have made. But the Minnesota Timberwolves, they're a team that has just as much experience as the Dallas Mavericks, and they are a bit older of a team overall than Dallas is. Dallas has the two big stars on the team with Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving, but the Minnesota Timberwolves have the one massive star in Anthony Edwards that a lot of people think is the face of the league right now with how well he is playing. This is a series that I think could go either way. Both teams have shown flashes on both sides of the ball, being a great offensive team and a great defensive team. Dallas has stepped up their defense in the NBA playoffs. I think Minnesota is a better defensive team than Dallas, but I do think that Dallas can be good enough defensively to slow down the Minnesota Timberwolves somewhat, especially if Anthony Edwards does have an off game. Minnesota's offense can stall because some of the other guys aren't consistently great on offense. Mike Conley also has a little bit of an injury right now, which is something to monitor with him being an older guy. If that flares up in this next series, that could really hurt the Minnesota Timberwolves. I've gone back and forth on this series thinking about who I believe is going to win, but at the end of the day, I said around 2 weeks ago that I feel that the winner of the 2024 NBA Finals is going to either be the Boston Celtics or the winner of the Denver Nuggets Minnesota Timberwolves series, and I'm going to stick with that point. I believe since the Minnesota Timberwolves got by the defending champs in the Denver Nuggets, they're going to be able to get by the Dallas Mavericks as well, but I think it's going to be a dogfight, and I feel it's going to go to 7 games. I think that Minnesota will be able to beat the Dallas Mavericks, but it's going to take all 7 games to do it, and with that win, they're going to end up facing the Boston Celtics in the 2024 NBA Finals, with the winner getting the crown as the best team in the NBA this season by winning the 2024 NBA title. But I can't wait to see what happens. I think both of these series are going to be great. I feel like the Dallas-Minnesota one's going to be more competitive, though. I think Indiana is going to give Boston a run for it, but I do think if the Knicks were healthy, that would have been a better series, but still Indiana-Boston is going to be fun, especially on offense. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Which teams you think are going to advance past the 2024 NBA Conference Finals into the 2024 NBA Finals, and what have been your thoughts on the 2024 NBA playoffs so far, and what you think about my picks for the Eastern Conference Finals and the Western Conference Finals, and whether you agree or disagree with my picks. Subscribe to the channel if you like sports content. Like this video down below. Follow me on Twitter as well. Link is in the description, and I'll see you next time.